Welcome back to your second class in marketing. Glad to have you here. When we finished the first class, I promised a discussion of image along with some practical steps you could take when beginning your new solo practice. I posted on our forum, on our class forum, two articles that I asked you to read, one from the Washington Post, one from the Boston Globe. And I'd like to discuss those articles and some other stories from the marketing literature that I will explain to you and its relevance to you. First of all, I think that you got to get over a psychological block concerning image. Most people, I think, have a sort of conflict set up in their mind between style and substance. That they're convinced that what should really matter is how good an attorney they are, and that should be enough. And when they think about packaging and presentation and image, it has some sort of connotation of falsity. So the first thing you have to do is get that out of your brain, okay? Because you have in business a product, and then you have the presentation of the product. Each are equally important. As a marketing person, I might argue that the presentation of the product, the package, is actually more important in ensuring sales. So let's talk about the first article that I posted. It was an article in the Washington Post, and they did a little experiment. And the experiment was that they sent Joshua Bell, one of the top 2 or 3 classical violinists in the world, down into the Washington Metro with a $2.5 million Stradivarius violin and had him play for the morning commuters in the subway. The results were recorded by the security cameras, and the results were this. Approximately 1,097 people walked by while he was playing. About 7 stopped to listen, and 3 threw some money into his open violin case. Okay, what does that tell you? What does that story tell you, and how is it relevant to your law practice? Well, those commuters were not qualified to judge a great classical violinist. They couldn't tell the difference between a great violinist and a mediocre violinist or a guy fiddling for spare change in the subway. Most of your potential clients will not be qualified to judge your services. They cannot tell the difference between an A- lawyer and a C+ lawyer. They don't know what you do. They don't know how you do it. They don't know if you're any good at it. Under those circumstances, they lack a rational basis for choosing you. Therefore, how are they going to choose? Well, the lesson of the subway is this: people listen with their eyes. Perhaps the most interesting book on the subject in recent years has been Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. And what Malcolm talks about in that book is what he calls rapid cognition, also called thin slicing. And in plain English, what he means is people make up their minds about everything in the first 30 seconds or so. And once they've made up their minds about it, it's very, very difficult to change. So, in these circumstances we've described where people are not qualified to judge what it is that you do, they're going to use another basis on which to choose you, to make up their minds about you. It's going to be primarily emotional, and nothing is going to affect it more than appearances. I think that's frustrating a lot of times. As I said, for attorneys, for one thing, an investment in image costs money, and for another, it's hard to measure the return on investment because almost no one will ever say to you, I hired you because you have this wonderful brochure. Even if they did choose you for that reason, or because you have a nice suit, or because you have a nice office, even if they chose you for that reason, they won't admit that they did. There is a raft of research that shows, for example, that the number one factor consumers use in buying a new car is how the car looks, what its appearance is. Now, should that be the most important thing in buying a new car? No. It should probably be about 25th, right? I mean, first should probably be safety and gas mileage and reliability and all kinds of other factors. But no, the number one factor is how does the car look? Think about how people make the most important decision of their lives, their choice of mate, of wife or husband, and what role does appearances play in that? A very strong role, I would suggest. So talking about how things should be, or thinking about that, is a waste of mental and emotional energy. What we need to do is accept what human nature is and then act accordingly. Here's another story from the world of marketing that can explain partly what I mean. There is a phenomenon in packaging called sensation transference. And a good example of that would be some years back, 7-Eleven changed the design of their label on their can of 7-Up. And it just so happened that the new can happened to have a little more yellow in it. And consumers immediately started complaining about the lemony taste. Now, the formula for 7-Up had not changed, same old 7-Up. The only thing that had changed was the can. The case of New Coke, you're perhaps familiar with that. Some years back, Coca-Cola, after doing a whole lot of research, introduced a product called New Coke that was overwhelmingly rejected by consumers. And this was baffling to the Coca-Cola executives because in blind taste tests, the consumers had demonstrated that they preferred the New Coke to what is now called Classic Coke by a 4-to-1 margin. However, when the taste test wasn't blind, when the consumer could see the labels, and they were married to that old Coca-Cola label, the statistics reversed themselves, and they preferred the old Coke, the Classic Coke, some 4-to-1. So the package, in effect, transfers a sensation to the product. And this is the same thing that happens in a law firm, particularly in circumstances like yours, because your product, which is legal services, is invisible. And when a product is invisible, it becomes all about the package. Think about, for example, bottled water in the supermarket or vodka, right? It's all about the bottle because the product itself is invisible. Well, I don't know if I should compare your budding law practice to vodka, but the fact is that there are a lot of similarities. Some of you, you're probably mostly too young to remember the old ads, hidden camera ads for Folgers Crystals coffee, instant coffee, which is disgusting stuff. Believe me, it's powdered coffee in a cup and add hot water. It's you don't want that. You want this good stuff here, the high test. But they used to do commercials where the hidden camera announcer would say, "We're here in the fabulous Blue Fox restaurant in San Francisco, and we've sneaked Folgers Instant Crystals coffee into the coffee cups of diners. Let's see what they think." And he'd go up and say, "Ma'am, how's your coffee?" And she'd say, "Wow, the coffee's wonderful." Well, why is the coffee wonderful? It's wonderful because she's drinking it out of an elegant china cup in the Blue Fox restaurant. That's why it's wonderful. So people listen with their eyes. And this is a crucial first step for you in establishing your new law firm, to make an investment in image. What does that mean? That means logo, business card, stationery, firm brochure, website, your office itself, your wardrobe, all of those kinds of things. As a matter of fact, I personally know an attorney who invested $3,000 in his wardrobe one year, and doubled his income the following year. I cannot prove that it's directly related to his wardrobe, but I suspected it really was. I think that it's gave him all kinds of confidence in his dealings with clients and in potential sales situations. Just think of yourself going into a singles bar to meet somebody, to hope to meet somebody, and you don't know anybody there. If you're dressed well and you feel that you look good, that's going to give a confidence to your interactions with other people, to the way you carry yourself and all of that, that you will not have if you don't feel that you look good. The longer that your image says struggling attorney, the longer the struggle. So you can shortcut that process really by investing in image. Here is one of the good things about image. I've told you some of the downsides, but here is one of the really special things about it. There are many things in starting your new practice and developing a solo practice that take time. For example, one of the subjects we'll be talking about later on is growing a referral network, a network of other professionals who can refer cases to you. That takes time. You have to develop those relationships. Acquiring legal skills and experience, that takes time to mature that way. So there are a number of things that are going to be involved in growing your practice that will take time. An image you can just buy. If you're willing to write the check, or you can come up with the resources, you can look like the best law firm in your area right from the first day. And most people are going to decide based on that. A second article that I had attached to the forum group was one from the Boston Globe. And it had to do with studies of crime, academic studies having to do with crime. And you should read the whole article, but I'll summarize it by saying this, that if you send in a crew to a very bad neighborhood, a crime-ridden neighborhood, and you fix up the neighborhood, you paint the house, you fix the broken windows, you clean up the empty lots or plant a garden or whatever, or those kinds of things, it has more effect on the crime rate than sending in floods of more policemen, more social workers, more personnel like that. So the evidence of one's eyes is effective even on criminal behavior. So again, this underlines this proposition that people listen with their eyes. And that's a very important point that you have to know in establishing your law practice. Here's another important point in starting your practice and why an investment in image is going to be very, very important. It's kind of a dirty little secret, but the fact is that if you have a great professional image, you can charge more for your services. Why can you charge more? It seems crazy. Well, you can charge more because you look like a firm that charges more. There's no more logic to it than that. But it's a very, very important distinction. In fact, I would argue that whatever investment you make in image will pay itself back within a very short amount of time by allowing you to charge more for those services than you would have ordinarily. So, give yourself, if you possibly can, that jump start by making sure that you look great right away. A customer who comes to your door, comes to your office, who meets you outside, is going to have an experience. You don't have any choice about that. What you do have a choice about is what kind of experience they're going to have, good or bad, what kind of first impression they're going to have. They're going to have a first impression. So you can either dictate what it's going to be and control it, or you can leave it up to happenstance. But my advice to you is to take charge of the first 30 to 90 seconds, because that's really going to determine what the relationship is going to be like throughout your engagement with the client and prospective client. Here is a quotation from Malcolm Gladwell in Blink, the book that I referenced earlier. Taking rapid cognition seriously, acknowledging the incredible power for good and ill that first impressions play in our lives, requires that we take active steps to manage and control those impressions. So there you have it from the master. You need to take control of that very first period where they're going to make up their minds about you. And having a great professional image in all aspects is going to do that for you. Another book that's out there, if you're interested to keep reading on this subject, is called Broken Windows, Broken Business. And the point that is made in that book is that if there's a small tear in the carpet of your office and you don't fix that tear, people are walking by, they're coming into your office, they're seeing that small detail, and they are garnering a subconscious impression that, really a series of negative impressions. One might be they don't pay attention to detail around here. Another one might be finances must not be too good here. They're not able to afford to repair this kind of thing. There's an impression of neglect, of carelessness that's conveyed that you don't want. What you want is the opposite, to create the impression that we are good, we're on top of it, we pay attention to the details, we know what we're doing around here. And image will convey that instantly and will convey it without words. So my first piece of practical advice to you in establishing your solo practice is to look as great as you are, even better. Invest in image. It's going to have a tremendous effect on your business. It's going to have a tremendous effect on the rate at which clients will engage you. It's going to have a tremendous effect on your own confidence and self-esteem. And I think that there is no better investment that you can make, really, coming right out of the gate establishing your own practice. So we will talk more as these lessons go along about how that affects every other aspect of your business as we move on to discuss things like seminars and building a referral network, and you're using the internet to market your practice. We'll be touching on all of that. But throughout it all, there is going to be this underlying premise that your clients do not have the qualifications to judge what you do. Therefore, they're going to make up their minds using the tools that they have. They're going to use their eyes, and they're going to judge you and your office and what you do by listening with their eyes. So please read the articles if you haven't. They're posted in the forum study group. And please continue reading and finish reading Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in our next class. So thanks very much for attending. Enjoyed it very much. Post your questions for me in the forum, and I'll be there during the posted classroom hours. Enjoy. Bye-bye.